make things up all the time. It's fine. All right, Revelation chapter 9. If you have your Bibles, we have the verses on the screen up there anyway. I can see because it's all lit up for me, iPad here. Revelation chapter 9. I'm sorry. Stereo? All right, Revelation chapter 9. It covers the fifth and sixth trumpet judgment. Now, this is about, and believe me, this is conjecture here, and depending on who you read, they try to really figure out what's happening and when it's happening on the planet Earth during this time. This seems to be about the midway point of the tribulation period. Seems to be. We're not sure of that, and I'll show you that a little bit as we get into the rest of the chapter. But chapter 9 covers the fifth and the sixth trumpet judgment. The seventh trumpet won't blow until midway through the 11th chapter. So still going to be working on the sixth trumpet judgment, and we're going to go through these. The final three trumpet judgments summon three woes to call to attention the severity of the last three judgments. The bowl judgments that are yet to come. After the trumpet judgments come the bowl judgments. They're even worse than these judgments. So that's why many feel this is the beginning. Some will take the tribulation period and designate it into two portions, calling the midway point the Great Tribulation, when literally all hell breaks loose on earth. And not all believe that way, but that's when many feel this is when all hell is beginning to break loose on earth. And then you come into the bowl judgments and things get even crazier. So let's start right here in verse 1. And the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. Now, the fifth judgment causes John, he sees this fallen star from heaven. This star is likely Satan. Some commentators will tell you that it's just an angel. Some will say that it's Jesus. I believe that it's Satan. I would think that's a majority view on this particular verse, so that's how I'm going to teach through this portion, that this is the devil, because we have indications of his fall in other verses. Jesus said he saw him falling, and anyway, I won't get into all that. But so God gave this, he fell, perfect tense, which means a completed action. He's still fallen. So this isn't, he fell past tense. This is, he's fallen, and he's still in a fallen state, okay? Again, pictures Satan to me. And God gave Satan a key here to allow these demons in the abyss to come out and torment the earth. The bottomless pit is the residence of demons. It's a place of confinement for fallen angels. Verse 2, and he opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like that of a great furnace, if you can picture this, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Some of you remember in the Gulf War when Saddam Hussein did his scorched earth policy in exiting Kuwait. He set the oil fields on fire, and so they're burning this awful black smoke for, in some cases, weeks after the Gulf War ended. Then Carl Sagan came on TV and said this was the end of the earth. Because that smoke from those few oil wells he lit up was going to literally change the ecology of the earth. Nothing really happened from it, and he was wrong, I guess. But it was. But if you remember that, the scenes of that billowing black, dark smoke, and literally for miles around that whole area, it would darken the sky. That smoke would cover the sun, and it was quite a sight back then. And that was just from a few oil wells. When the Holy Spirit inspires John to say that the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft, you can imagine it was something very significant that's going on the planet Earth. William Barclay says this. Barclay's wonderful historically. He brings up a lot of things a lot of people don't bring up in all his commentaries. He says, we find the most detailed descriptions of the abyss are in the apocryphal book Enoch. That book, the book of Enoch, is very respected actually in the Jews. The Jews will use that book, recite, and as an inspired source, some of them. book of Enoch, which was so influential between the testaments. There it is the prison about the angels who fell, the angels who came to the earth and seduced mortal women, Genesis 6, 1 through 4. The angels who taught meant to worship demons instead of the true God. There are grim descriptions of it. It has no firmament above, no firm earth beneath. It has no water, it has no birds. It is a waste and a horrible place. The end of heaven and earth, it is chaotic. There is fire which blazes in a cleft into the abyss, whose magnitude passes all conjecture. Barclay's trying to paint a picture with what biblical and extra-biblical sources we have of somebody of the magnitude of this place. We would know it as the abyss. We would know it as hell, or at least a portion of hell. The he in this verse obviously is Satan. God cast him out of heaven at the beginning of the tribulation period, Revelation 12:9. And now here he is again with the keys, unleashing, with God's permission, time of God's judgment, this torrent of judgment into the human race. So, just to comment a little bit on this, as to bring a practical aspect to it, it seems to indicate here that this whole demonic smoke, mist, and attack will give you an idea of the spiritual corruption that's on the earth at this time. You're going to see as we get to the rest of Revelation chapter 9 that despite this incredible, fierce judgment, the hearts of men still didn't change. There's a darkness that comes on the earth during this time that some will respond to light, the preaching of the 144th sealed Jews, but there's still a level of willful disobedience and willful darkness when God's knocking on the door of their life and showing them the fierceness of all heaven, and they still don't turn from their sins. It's an amazing thing, the depths of depravity. And please, don't think that man is only a little depraved. You take the world, take Christianity out of the world, and you have a bloodthirsty, murderous, nasty place. The only countries that are civilized, that treat people with dignity and value human life, are countries that have at least a Christian heritage to them. You go to the countries that don't have a Christian heritage, and you'll find bloodthirstiness, and human life is cheap. It's cheap and has no value. Verse 3. I'm going to read right to verse 11 here. And then from the smoke comes locusts on the earth. And they were given power, like the power of scorpions of the earth. And they were told not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green plant, or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their forehead. Anyone on the earth except the 144,000 were open to their torment. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torment was like a torment of a scorpion when it stings somebody. And in those days, men will seek death and not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. In appearance, the locusts were like horses prepared for battle. On their heads, which were looked like crowns of gold, their faces were like human faces. Their hair like woman's hair, and their teeth like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots and with horses running into battle. You're not going to call the bug man to get rid of these things. They have tails and stings like scorpions, and their power to hurt people for 5 months is in their tails. And here's the verse that we'll end up on tonight, or at least focus on a little bit later. And they have a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon. In Greek, he is called Apollyon. Now, the biblical imagery of a locust plague obviously is exceptionally powerful. Look at the plague that in Egypt that Moses brought in through one of the one of the plagues. A locust plague could wipe out a city or even a state back then. There'd be nothing green left. When a locust plague came into an area, everything green would just be gone. They'd strip every tree, every blade of grass, every leaf, to a place where it would ruin and destroy the ecology of any certain area. In 1866, I looked up a few things on this. There was a locust plague in Algiers, a relatively modern country. 200,000 people died. 200,000 because of a locust plague. It came in and wiped out every bit of vegetation, every crop they had. And as a result of that, in the ensuing famine that took place, 200,000 people died. Barclay said this: when they move, the locusts, they move relentlessly on like an army with leaders. People have dug trenches and lit fires and even fired cannons in an attempt to stop them, but without success. They come on in a steady column which climb hills, enter homes, and leave scorched earth behind. But these locusts weren't like the locusts we have on earth. These were demon locusts, so they didn't care about the plants. They were looking for people. That was their focus. The 5 months represent about one generation of this animal, this beast, whatever it is. Now, some feel that this is one commentator, that these locusts are helicopters. Shooting nerve gas and different chemical weapons that would torture areas and stuff like that. Now, I can understand in a sense when you try to put a natural, here's John seeing an Apache helicopter. He doesn't know what he's looking at, and he tries to describe it the best that he can. I can understand that description. They say, well, they don't come from the bottomless pit. No, but their general does. I mean, he comes, so you can get around that argument. I just want to take it literally, though. To me, to put that into a commentary and say these could be Soviet, they actually said Soviet helicopters and stuff. That I think the Bible, we're going to take the Bible for what it says. He sees for what he described in the best that he could these things that no human eye has ever seen before and won't see until. Verse 12, the first woe is past. Behold, 2 woes still to come. Then the 6th angel blew his trumpet, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar before God, saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. And so the 4 angels who have been prepared for the hour, the month, the day, the month, and the year were released to kill 1/3 of mankind. Now, as you go back in the 4th seal, 3 or 4 weeks ago, remember we talked about a quarter of the Earth's population was killed. So the Earth's population is 6 to 7 billion people now, maybe a little bit more at this point. So you're not talking thousands or even millions. You're talking hundreds of millions of people that are killed in a very short period of time. So along with the new massive loss of life, now about half the world's population is dead. Half. That would be 3 billion to 3.5 billion people have died. And that's not including those killed by war, famine, or disease. So even more than that. What do you even do? This isn't even trying to be funny, but what do you even do with the corpses? How do you even bury the dead? You would think the planet Earth would be numb by what they're witnessing and what they're going through at this time. The number of mounted troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000. I heard their number. That's 200 million. Who could put a 200 million army out today? China, probably India, not Rhode Island. But there was, that's about it. Maybe Russia, if they got everybody, but no, 200 million. And this is how I saw the horses in my vision, and those who rode them. They wore breastplates like the color of fire, and of sapphire, and of sulfur, and the heads of the horses were like lions' heads, and the fire and the smoke and the sulfur came out of their mouths. But by these 3 plagues, a third of mankind was killed by fire and smoke and sulfur coming out of their mouths. For the power of the horses was in their mouth and in their tails. For in their tails are like serpents with heads. By means of them they wound. So these horses weren't horses like we would know. The rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues, watch this now, did not repent of the works of their hands, nor give up worshiping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze and stone and woods, which cannot see, hear, or walk. Nor did they repent for their murders or their sorceries or their sexual immorality or their thefts. So nothing changed their hearts. Listen, I'm going to get into another little portion of the message in a second here, but nobody is in hell by accident. People are in hell by choice. God laid it because of the love of God. He looks at mankind and says, look, I love you. I'll die on a cross for you. I'll open the door to eternal life and relationship with me. But if you go like this to me, if you say no to me, then I will give you what you want. If you want to live the rest of eternity without me, then I will grant that wish. I will not force myself upon you. So you can go to hell because that's where you want to go. I don't want you to go there, but that's where you want to go, so you can go to hell, which I made for those who don't want me. It's their rejection of Christ. It's not a mean God, an austere God. It's them saying, no, I don't want a relationship with Christ. No, I don't want Jesus. No, I don't want to go to heaven. I want to go to hell. And that's what they say. There are no victims in hell. Just stupid people. But no victims. Now, Satan here is called Apollyon, which means destroyer. I'm going to spend a little time with the rest of the message on this, because this is actually fun to preach about. So far, I just preached about half the world dying. Not the best, funnest thing in the world to develop that and stuff. But this I think, will help you a little bit. John 10:10 says this, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I come that they may have life and have it more abundantly. So Jesus says the thief, who would the thief be? The devil. He comes only to steal and kill and destroy. So Jesus sort of defines him here. He's a destroyer. He's a killer. He's a thief. Just like Apollyon. Apollyon is a destroyer. His name means destruction. So I want to look at this. What does this mean? Satan, my friends, has been developing new schemes and plans, new deceptions for every age. And it seems overwhelming when you see his proficiency. In other words, he's not going to attack me in America with persecution fear. I don't think anyone's going to be persecuting me physically here in a little while. If I'm in the Sudan, if I'm in Bangladesh, in an Islamic country, that's what I'm worried about, somebody busting in the door and killing me or my family or torturing me. But I also don't think he's going to go to the Sudan and start projecting to people, you don't have anyone to take care of you when you retire. Fear of security issues. Because they don't have any security. They've never had security, so it's not even on their radar screen. What am I getting at? His attacks, his methodology changes from culture to culture, from time epoch to time epoch. It changes. And what we faced maybe 100 years ago in our country, the warfare and the style and the brilliancy of his warfare, and he's brilliant, changes with it. Now, how do you prove that? Well, in the last 25 years, has our country shifted further and further away from God? Has our educational system shifted further away from God? Don't think that happened because of Washington. They were just a tool. There was a scheme. There was a plan. There was a wile behind that whole thing. Then Ephesians 6, 10 through 12. There was a plan to start turning slowly, incrementally, society's hearts. Where the things that we would never accept, now we accept them. Society accepts them. Same-sex marriages. Can you imagine that 30 years ago being accepted? But now, it's people look at you like you're half crazy if you say, I believe in traditional marriage. I'm not ranting politically here. I want to show you there's a plan, there's a scheme that God has for America, that God has for every country, not just us, and everyone names the name of Christ. And he takes that same scheme from a national level to an individual level. He has a scheme for you too. He has a plan with your name on it, personalized for you. Now, he's always consistently, from our relationships to my life with my internal life with God, myself, the focus of my life, he's always seeking, 1 Peter 5:8, whom he may what? Devour. There's that word again. Whom he may devour. He has always been a destroyer. He's never been a builder. He never builds things up. He tears things down. And like I said, he will customize your fall or demise. He looks for glitches in your spiritual armor. He knows the things that you've hid from man. He knows the unhappiness you may have in a marriage, and he knows he can bring you somebody who will understand you and make you feel good. Why? Because he's a destroyer, and he wants to destroy your marriage. He wants to destroy your economics. He wants to destroy your physical health if he can. It's his agenda to destroy. How does he do it? What does he look for? First of all, stealth capability. I love that. Probably one of the number one technologies that's changed warfare in the world in the last 100 years is stealth technology. We saw it first introduced to the world in the early 90s. What's that mean? It means that we can sneak up on people and no one can see us. We're stealth. They're unaware. Before they know we're upon them, we're upon them. And this is Satan's greatest, really, wisdom that he can have. He will do whatever he can do to remain undetected. Barnhouse said this: surely one of Satan's greatest stratagems has been the attempt to keep men in ignorance of his real nature and of his being the fraudulent dimensions of his pretensions. In other words, keep them just ignorant that he's even behind these things. He does not announce his arrival or intentions, and he's rarely discerned. Many of us go through our Christian life, my friends, and not even being aware of spiritual warfare. When we hear that term spiritual warfare, we think this far out, crazy, casting demons out of pillows stuff. Spiritual warfare is not that flashy. It's subtle. It's indiscernible. It's quiet. It's custom made for you. It looks for the glitches in your life, the areas of discontentment, unhappiness, and it begins to exploit them. It'll set you up one way or another, somehow. Spiritual warfare doesn't come with a billboard, not the tough stuff. It comes so quietly and so hidden. So oftentimes in other people. Next thing is wounded spirits. Satan uses a wounded spirit. I've watched it for years to take people out of the race. John Bevere wrote this wonderful book. I think everyone should read it. He titled the book, The Bait of Satan. And the whole book, an inch thick, is all about people who get their feelings hurt. A wounded spirit. And because they get their feelings hurt, and of course they get their feelings hurt, who hurt their feelings? Well, another person. Another person hurt their feelings, or a church, or whatever. President Obama hurt their feelings. Somebody hurt them. Somebody wounded them. and because they're wounded, they look like this. They're blaming the horizontal for that, whatever that wound caused, when the whole time it's Satan saying, yeah, I can wound you. If I wound you, I'll get you right out of the race. I'll put you right on the sideline. I'll make you so occupied with the offense and so occupied with the things that people did to you or didn't do to you, or how they ignored you or whatever. I'll make you so occupied with that you won't even see the warfare going on around you. You're already a victim of the warfare. Martin Lloyd-Jones said, if you're not aware of the spiritual warfare, you're already a victim of it. Wounded spirits. We look on the horizontal to pin blame of our misery on a person and not the devil. Now, can God use somebody's tongue? Yeah. There's an old Hebrew word in the Septuagint called egestramuthos. And it's hard to find it, but it's there, believe me. And it's a word that talks about a spirit that influences human vocal cords. You ever hear some stuff come out of somebody's mouth, you think, where'd that come from? Wow. How did they say that? Why did they say that? What would even have them to say that? What would make them say that? You've seen it. Maybe you've done it. Egestramuthos. Colossians, forgiveness. This is why forgiving people who have sinned against us is vital in spiritual warfare. I'll show you an example. 2 Corinthians 2, verse 10 and 11. When you forgive this man, this was a man that was sinned in the church. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, this man, I believe, was in sexual sin with his mother-in-law, I think it was. And it was a pretty disgusting thing. And so they threw him out of the church. They had church discipline on him. And but now he repented, and they weren't welcoming him back into fellowship. So he says, and when you forgive this man, I forgive him too. And when you forgive whatever needs to be forgiven, I do so with Christ's authority for your benefit, so that Satan will not outsmart us, for we are familiar with his evil schemes. So unforgiveness, according to the Apostle Paul here, is an evil scheme. It's a satanic scheme, satanically inspired, satanically scripted, to divide a local church, divide families in that local church, divide whatever the overall scheme was. Sometimes it's ignorance of our own flesh. It becomes a target zone for the devil. I always define the flesh as us trying to meet my own God-given needs through my own strength. God gave me these needs of love, affirmation, acceptance. We all were part in the Garden of Eden when he breathed life into me. Security, significance. They're all wonderful, nothing wrong with them, but they're supposed to be met by God. In the Garden of Eden, they were met by him. So now since the fall and sins come into the human race, I have this thing called flesh, which I still have these needs. They didn't leave. They're still part of my humanity. But now I'm looking horizontal to get them met and not vertical to get them met. And that's always trouble. Because horizontal relationships can only take you so far. It's our vertical relationship that gets us to the finish line. So we become ignorant of our own flesh. And I can spend more time on that, but you've seen it, my friends. Maybe I'm not preaching to anyone, but in my 30 years of pastoring, I've seen people go from relationship to relationship, one bad decision to the next bad decision to the next bad decision, looking for love in all the wrong places. They don't know themselves. And Satan says, I can get these people. I'll just bring in Prince Charming or Princess Charming to say all the right things, and I'll get them on another rabbit trail. And they'll lose another 5, 6, 7, 8 years of their life. Religious deception. I'm going to go quickly here and have you out here in 2 hours. This is when we become content with my ability to live by or with a moral code of outward conformity. In other words, I train myself to live a Christian existence without a real internal fire for God. This happens to saints who've been part of churchianity for many years, as well as those who maybe grew up in a Christian culture. In other words, we do this so much, friends, that we know how to speak, what not to say, how to act, how to perform. Or maybe I grew up in church. Mom and Dad had me in church. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. That's awesome.